So you want to never pay taxes again. Sorry, that's against the rules. So let's break the rules. And if we're going to break the rules, we need to know them. Never paying tax is illegal, or at least the IRS thinks it should be. There is 3 major court decisions that build up to a loophole we are going to use. Because a mistake was made along the way that lets the richest people in America pay basically nothing in taxes. The strategy even has a name. It's called buy, borrow, die, now. In a perfect tax-free world, you just keep every dollar you make. But our first court decision in 1916 prevents that. Brushaber versus Union Pacific Railroad, the Supreme Court rules that it is constitutional to tax your income from whatever source it's earned. Because if you earn your money the normal way, as a paycheck, it gets taxed the moment you make it before it ever hits your account. And the more you earn, the more they take, all the way up to 37%. We've got billionaires out here paying a lower rate than their secretary. Good luck pulling that off on a paycheck. So rule number 1 of never paying taxes, never have income. But you've still got to get rich somehow, right? And you won't do it on a salary. So how do you build a fortune the government can't touch? You don't earn it, you own it. Move 1. Buy stocks, real estate, a company, anything that goes up in value. And here's the part that makes it work. You'd expect the government to tax all that growth. But in 1920, our second court decision stops them. Eisner versus Macomber, the Supreme Court rules that you are only taxed on a gain once you realize it. Once you actually sell, growth you haven't sold isn't income at all. So you buy a stock at $1, it climbs to $1 billion, and as long as you never sell, the government's official position is that you have made $0. On paper, you're broke. In reality, you're sitting on $1 billion you've never paid a cent on. So now you've got $1 billion the government can't touch. But now you can't sell that stock, and the second you sell to turn it into cash, you trigger the exact tax you've been dodging. Capital gains, up to 23.8%. Gone. But you're a billionaire looking to spend, so selling is just not going to cut it. Move 2. Borrow. And here's the logic. If the gain you never sold isn't income, then the cash you borrow against it isn't income either. A loan is not income, you have to pay it back, so the government doesn't tax it. So you walk into a bank and say, I've got $1 billion inches stock. I'm not selling it, I just want to borrow against it. And the bank says yes happily because you are the safest customer alive. They hand you millions at 1 or 2%. Tax-free spending money, and you never sold a thing. The rich call it living off the float. Everyone else calls it a credit card with no limit and no taxes. Thank God we fixed that, right? But the loan still has to be paid back eventually, and to pay it back, you'd have to sell, and selling triggers the tax. The limit is still there, so we need our third move. Move 3. Die, and this is where the mistake was made. When you die, your heirs inherit your $1 billion inches stock and logically. This is the moment the government finally collects every dollar of tax you dodged your whole life. Instead, it does the opposite. There is a single line in the tax code section 1014, and it says that when you inherit an asset, its value resets to whatever it's worth the day the owner died. They call it the stepped-up basis. If the gain was never income while you were alive, then the day you die, the gain simply never existed. That's the logic. That dollar you paid, gone. The $1 billion you never paid tax on, erased. Your heirs can sell the entire fortune the next morning and owe nothing. The tax bill doesn't get paid, it gets deleted. Important note, this wasn't a Supreme Court ruling. Nobody ever fought it up to the Supreme Court section. 1014 is just a line in the tax code. And it goes back to 1921, written for one boring reason. When someone died, nobody could prove what Grandpa originally paid for the farm decades ago. So the tax code just shrugged and reset the value to the day he died. A paperwork convenience. Nobody thought it would be important, and that shortcut quietly became the single biggest reason the richest people on earth pay nothing. Try to pause here and figure out how you'd never pay $1 of tax with these tools, because now it's easy. All you have to do is buy assets, so you never have income, borrow against them, so you get cash without selling, and die. So the gains vanish before anyone can tax them. Own everything, sell nothing, die rich. An entire life of spending a fortune, and the tax owed is $0. And because the law has declared that growth you haven't sold could never possibly be income, you're in the clear. That is how the richest people in America have lived for decades. In 2007, the richest man on earth, Jeff Bezos, paid $0 in federal income tax. He did it again in 2011. In 2018, Elon Musk paid zero. ProPublica pulled the actual IRS files. The 25 richest Americans grew their fortunes by $401 billion and paid a true tax rate of 3.4%. Your plumber pays more. Now, to any normal person, that's a clear mistake because that's the tax system working exactly backwards. What we've been calling smart accounting is just not paying taxes. There is no functional difference between income you spend and a loan you never repay if it buys the yacht. It's not income. It's a clear oversight. This is why the wealthiest people alive can pay a lower rate than the person who cleans their office. Most of what they live on was never income at all. It was borrowed against assets that get wiped clean at death. The solution is simple. Tax the gains at death, or tax the borrowing as income. And it can happen the moment the law decides the rich should pay tax the way you do. But until that mistake is fixed, this is your up-to-date guide on how to never pay taxes.